The little girl's voice cracked through the thick air like a lightning bolt, trembling with fear and innocence. Her tiny fists were clenched, her tear-streaked face lifted toward a group of men who looked like they belonged in another world entirely. Tattoos crawling up their arms, leather vests gleaming under the harsh sunlight, engines of their motorcycles still rumbling behind them. Everyone around froze. For a moment, even the world seemed to hold its breath. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion in unexpected places, then please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel. Because today's story will remind you that heroes don't always wear uniforms, they sometimes wear leather. The scene unfolded in front of the hospital emergency entrance. The girl, no older than 6, stood barefoot on the pavement, her blue dress fluttering in the wind. Behind her, the red emergency sign glowed like a warning beacon. Her mother, pale and weak, was sitting in the passenger seat of an old car a few feet away. She was gasping for air, her chest rising and falling painfully as she clutched at her ribs. But between her and the hospital doors stood a cluster of men in black vests. To an outsider, they looked terrifying. They were members of the infamous Hells Angels motorcycle club. Their stance was firm, their expressions unreadable. The little girl didn't understand that they weren't blocking her mother out of cruelty, at least not yet. All she saw were giants keeping her mommy from the help she desperately needed. Her cries pierced through the murmurs of the onlookers. "Please, she can't breathe. Please let her in." Her voice trembled and she started sobbing so hard she could barely get the words out. That's when one of the men, a tall bearded man with a weathered face and tattoos running down his arms, stepped forward. His name was Ryder. He knelt down so his eyes were level with the little girl's, his rough hands resting on his knees. Around them, the other bikers fell silent, watching their leader carefully. Ryder's face was lined with years of hardship and regret, but in that moment, his heart broke wide open at the sight of her tears. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "who's your mommy?" She pointed shakily toward the car. Her mother's head had slumped forward against the steering wheel, her breathing shallow. Without hesitation, Ryder's voice boomed across the parking lot, commanding his men, "Get the doors open. Now." In an instant, the scene transformed. The same men who had looked like barriers of danger became a blur of motion, rushing toward the car, waving to nurses, clearing the path. The hospital staff, seeing the urgency in their movements, scrambled to bring out a stretcher. Within seconds, the woman was being carefully lifted and wheeled inside, the little girl running beside her mother's side, clutching her hand. Ryder stayed behind for a moment, standing still, his chest heaving as he watched them disappear through the sliding glass doors. He wasn't supposed to be there that day. The Hells Angels had come to the hospital for one of their own, a member injured in a highway accident. They'd gathered outside, waiting for news, and the hospital security had told them to stay back. That's when the little girl and her mother had pulled up. Later, Ryder would say that when he saw her, tiny, terrified, and begging for help, it reminded him of his own daughter, a daughter he hadn't seen in years. The pain of that memory was what made him act without thinking. Inside, the doctors worked frantically. The woman was suffering from a severe asthma attack, her lungs constricted and starved of oxygen. The nurses later said that if she'd arrived even a few minutes later, she might not have survived. The little girl sat in the waiting area, clutching a small teddy bear one of the bikers had given her. Every time the automatic doors slid open, she'd look up, hoping to see her mom. Ryder stood outside, pacing. The hospital staff, who had initially been wary of the group, now looked at them differently. These weren't heartless criminals. They were men who'd stepped up when others froze. Hours passed, and finally a doctor came out. He looked at the group, then at Ryder. "She's stable now. She's going to be okay." A wave of relief washed over everyone, but none more than the little girl. She ran straight into Ryder's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He froze for a second. He wasn't used to being hugged like that, but then he wrapped his arms around her, holding her as gently as if she were made of glass. "Thank you," she whispered against his leather vest. "You saved my mommy." Those words hit him harder than any punch he'd ever taken. He didn't respond, just smiled through tears he tried to hide. Behind him, his brothers nodded silently, a few wiping their own eyes. In that moment, the line between outlaw and hero blurred completely. When the woman woke up later that evening, the first thing she asked was where her daughter was. The little girl ran to her bedside, crying tears of joy. The mother held her close, overwhelmed with gratitude. Through the window, she saw Ryder and his crew getting ready to leave. They didn't stay for thanks, didn't wait for recognition. They simply nodded once at the girl through the glass, then mounted their bikes. The engines roared to life like thunder rolling through the sky. The little girl pressed her tiny hand against the window, watching as they rode away into the sunset. For her, those men weren't the monsters people said they were. They were angels, rough around the edges, yes, but angels all the same. From that day on, she would tell everyone the same story: the Hell's Angels saved my mommy. And for Ryder, somewhere deep inside, that little girl's tears had washed away a piece of the darkness he'd carried for years. Maybe he couldn't fix his past, but that day, he found a small redemption. Sometimes it takes the most unexpected people to remind us what humanity truly means. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to keep more real stories of kindness alive. There's a lot of good in this world. You just have to look closely enough to see it. Comment below, what would you have done if you were in Ryder's place? Would you have stopped to help, even if the world didn't expect it from you? Because at the end of the day, true strength isn't about how tough you look. It's about how much love and courage you carry inside.